The morning sun had only just begun to melt the thin layer of frost on the city streets when the man known for never breaking his routine suddenly stopped walking. Alexander Reed, a young CEO whose life ran on precision, deadlines, and schedules tighter than steel, was on his way to a crucial board meeting. His polished shoes clicked steadily on the pavement, his expression sharp, focused, and unreadable, until he saw her. A tiny girl, no more than 4, stood near the black iron fence of an old townhouse. Her backpack was nearly as big as her, scuffed and slightly torn. Her little hands were trembling, her nose pink from the cold morning air, and her eyes, large, uncertain, hopeful, lifted right into his as he passed. Something in her gaze made him pause. He couldn't explain it, but it felt like her eyes grabbed the edge of his heartbeat and refused to let go. She held onto the fence as if it were the only stable thing she had left. And when she finally spoke, her small voice cracked the morning silence. "Sir, my mom didn't come home last night." Before moving forward with the story, viewers, if you believe the world still needs kindness, compassion, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. Alexander's chest tightened in a way he hadn't felt in years. He had spent most of his adult life training himself not to feel too deeply, too messy, too distracting, too vulnerable. But the fear in her trembling voice felt like a small hand squeezing the part of him he had tried to keep quiet. He knelt down slowly, unsure why his instincts were overriding every logical thought. The girl looked at him as though he were the only adult left in her world. Her hair was slightly messy, tied into uneven pigtails, and her coat was too thin for the sharp winter morning. She clutched the strap of her backpack like she was holding onto hope itself. The street around them was awake with daylight, cars passing, people rushing to work, the sunlight reflecting through the pale winter air. Yet in that moment, to Alexander, everything else went quiet. He asked her gently where she lived. She pointed toward a small row of apartments on the far corner of the street. She explained, in halting fragments, that her mom always came home before dawn because she worked the night shift at a nearby bakery. Every morning, the little girl would wait by the fence until she saw her mother walking up the street. But today, she waited, and the sun had already come up, yet her mother was nowhere in sight. She had stood there all morning, hoping someone she could trust would pass by. The thought shook Alexander. He wondered how many adults had walked past her, too busy to notice. Too busy to care. He picked up her backpack carefully. It was heavier than expected, filled with random things a child considered important, small toys, a drawing, a snack. As they walked toward her building, she told him her name was Lily. Her voice was tiny but brave. Alexander listened, feeling something unfamiliar rising in his chest. Memories of his own childhood flickered in the back of his mind, of waiting alone, of people not coming home, of learning too young that life could be unstable. He tightened his jaw, trying to bury those memories, but Lily's presence made it impossible. The sun shone above them, bright but cold, illuminating every detail of the quiet street. The world felt strangely fragile under daylight. When they reached her building, the front door was unlocked, slightly open, as if someone had rushed out or never returned. Alexander felt a strange prickle on the back of his neck. They entered the small apartment, sunlight spilling through the thin curtains. It was tidy, too tidy. A single mug on the kitchen counter. A coat missing from the hanger. A phone charger still plugged in, but no phone attached. Lily wandered into the living room, picking up her stuffed rabbit from the couch as if hoping it would tell her where her mother had gone. Alexander felt an unease settle deeper in his chest. Something was wrong. He checked the bedroom. The bed was made. A work uniform was missing. And then he noticed it, Lily's mother's phone on the floor near the doorway, cracked as though it had been dropped. Suddenly everything felt urgent. Alexander wasn't a detective. He wasn't a rescuer. But at that moment, logic didn't matter. He called his security team, something he hardly ever did for personal matters. They arrived within minutes, alert and ready. He instructed them to contact the bakery and check any nearby CCTV footage from the early morning. Lily sat on the couch, clutching her stuffed rabbit. The sunlight hit her little face as she watched him silently, trusting him without needing proof. A trust he didn't feel worthy of. When his team returned with information, the picture became clearer. Lily's mother had indeed left the bakery after her shift, but halfway down the street she had slipped on a patch of ice and fallen. A delivery driver had taken her to the hospital in a hurry when she couldn't stand from the pain. She had been admitted, alone and unconscious, with no identification because her phone had been broken during the fall. Alexander let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He looked at Lily, who seemed to shrink deeper into herself, scared, confused. He made a decision without hesitation. He took her hand and walked her to his car, something no one else had ever been allowed to enter except business partners and executives. In the warm, sunlit vehicle, Lily finally whispered that she was scared her mom had left her. Alexander felt something twist inside him. He reassured her quietly, and even he was surprised by how natural it felt to comfort her. They reached the hospital, and when Lily spotted her mother lying in the bed, awake but weak, she ran to her with a sound that cracked every heart in that room. Her mother cried softly, apologizing over and over. Alexander stood at the door, watching the reunion as sunlight filled the room. He realized he had just witnessed a moment that would stay with him forever. The nurse explained the mother would recover but needed rest, medication, and someone to watch Lily during her shifts. Alexander offered help without being asked, surprising even himself. Lily's mother hesitated, embarrassed, overwhelmed, but the warmth in Alexander's voice made her realize he wasn't offering out of pity. He was offering out of something deeper that even he didn't fully understand. The sunlight through the window felt softer now, warmer, as if acknowledging a small miracle. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Stories like this are made to remind the world that kindness still exists. Before the ending, please comment, kindness changes lives. Alexander visited them often over the next few weeks, during the day when Lily and her mother needed support the most. A man who once lived only for business found himself caring, smiling, and feeling again. He realized that sometimes life places people in your path not by accident but because your heart has been waiting for them all along. And though he didn't know what the future held, he knew one thing for certain: helping that little girl on a cold morning had changed the course of his life forever.
Le anularon un gol a Boca. Yo ya está. Yo ya no me voy a poner a verlo más. Así que estoy acá, tranquilo con ustedes. Tomando un cafecito. Ya podría estar un poquito más caliente.